Erectile dysfunction for most men is an issue with circulation. 90% of men, it's an issue with circulation. Okay. So what are the things you can do to improve circulation? First of all, exercise. Second of all, eat better. Third of all, take a nitric oxide booster, right? Nitric oxide boosters improve circulation, improve blood pressure. I have a nitric oxide booster called Affirm from Affirm Science, but it's a super simple thing to do. You lose nighttime erections, take a nitric oxide booster before you go to sleep.
Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mental Purpose Podcast. Today, it's exciting. I had a lot of fun on this interview. Dr. Judson Brandeis. He is a pretty amazing guy, and we talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about sex, muscle building, erectile dysfunction, all having to do with the man, you know? And we're going to talk about relationships, and we're going to talk about personal development. We're going to talk about being invincible when you're younger, and we're going to talk about sharing your failures with your kids. And there's so much that we talk about. And we also talk about taking action and being accountable. Because one of the biggest things that guys talk to me about is they say to me, hey man, I want to get in your program. I want you to coach me. I want to join your mastermind. I want to join your front runner events. And we say, cool. And the only question we have is not, are you willing to pay the money, but are you willing to do the work? And that's one of the big things we talk about. And that's the intro clip here is, I'm not your mom. I'm not your dad. I can provide you with all the tools and resources possible. However, if you don't want to do the work, if what's at stake is not big enough, right? If you don't have enough pain in your life to make those changes and make them last, then there's not much that we can do for you. And there's not much that anybody can do. And Dr. Judson, he talks about that too. You can give a man this comprehensive health plan, but if he doesn't follow it, if he doesn't take action on it, what good is it? So we're going to get really deep into that too. This is a really great episode. You guys are going to love it. Before I tell you about Dr. Judson and his extremely impressive resume, remember, you're listening to one of two free resources that we have. The podcast is a free resource. You get tons of content. There's a lot of episodes. Don't just listen to this one. Go back and listen to a ton of them. There's a lot of great stuff. Remember, I am extremely purposeful. This isn't men on occasionally purposeful. This isn't men on accident. This is men on purpose. So I don't put people on this podcast that aren't going to be awesome, that aren't going to give you the information that you guys have asked for. So just trust that. Go back and just see what line catches you, or the name of the episode, which one catches you, and click on it, and then get a pen and paper and take some notes. Because look, at the end of the day, if you're just listening, that's totally fine. But there are these guys that we're interviewing, they are giving some amazing information. And there are patterns in their information that apply to your life. Match up their info with the patterns in your life, and you may have a formula, and you got it for free just listening to something. That's freaking cool. The other free resource is the Mental Purpose community on Facebook. It's growing like crazy. We are experiencing a lot of growth, and we are super grateful about that, super happy about it. And if you haven't already, just take action. If you're on purpose, take action. Go to Facebook, type in the Mental Purpose community, click join, put your email address in. I'm not going to spam you. We're just going to let you know cool stuff that we've got going on, retreats and classes and different stuff on the free community. And if you're going to join the community, be a part of it, because there are amazing men in there. They're doing extraordinary things on purpose, and they could help you. And your sharing helps other people out way more than you think it does. I'm going to leave it there. All right. So Dr. Judson Brandeis is an award-winning urologist, sexual medicine expert, clinical researcher, physician educator, and a clearing clinician and surgeon. He's a graduate of Brown University and Vanderbilt University School of Medicine, surgery residency at UCLA, and postdoc fellowship at Harvard. Today, he specializes in the emerging field of sexual health and medicine, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But we're also going to be talking about the human within that. A lot of times he talks about it and says, it's not about prescribing a medicine. It's about treating the entire human and the stuff in their relationships and their past, just like we do. So we're super aligned with Dr. Brandeis and what he's doing for men out there. So let me keep telling you a little bit more, because his resume is huge. Over the course of his 25-year career as a board-certified urologist, he has performed thousands of surgeries and pioneered surgical robotics. In February of 2019, he opened Brandeis MD, a national leader in technology and sexual medicine innovations for men. Brandeis MD engages in ongoing clinical research to improve well-being and provide tools for men to live their best lives, kind of like we're doing, just not in that aspect, right? Look, I could go on and on about Dr. Brandeis. He is impressive. He's an extraordinary guy. It was fun. We had a lot of fun in this interview. You guys are going to have a lot of fun listening to it. As always, we appreciate you. We thank you for listening. We thank you for supporting our mission, the movement we're creating with the Mental Purpose community. Go join the Mental Purpose community and enjoy this episode. All right, Judson, welcome to the podcast, man. We probably could have filled up an hour just doing just pre-work. And
just the pre-work, huh?
Just the pre-work. So let's obviously now we're on record. Let's get some stuff out, some value to these guys listening. Man, you are an expert in a lot of fields. So I want to go back for a second before we get into that. And I want to talk about your early stuff and some of the challenges you might have faced that a lot of these guys might be facing too. And the reason why I want to do that is because these guys are going to look at your credentials and say, that guy never dealt with the stuff I deal with. And that's completely not true. You know what I mean? Like, you're still a human. You're still a guy. You still deal with stuff that every human deals with, even though there's some plaques on your wall that say you have some degrees and some certifications. And I want to make sure that these guys know they're not alone. No matter what you have, what you do, or how you've reached, you still deal with stuff every day.
Oh yeah. It hits the fan for everyone.
Yeah.
So for me, it hit the fan when I was 50. So
50?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a hard worker and a smart guy all my life. So, I went through high school and I went to Brown University for college, and I was an athlete. I ran track and cross country and did triathlons. And then I went to Vanderbilt for medical school. And then I did a year of research sponsored by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute at Harvard Medical School. And then I went to UCLA for residency. So one of the top surgery and urology residencies. Then I moved up to Northern California. I got a great job at a premier urology practice and worked my way up. And I was the chief of urology at the local hospital for 10 years and the chief of urology for the local HMO for 10 years. And I was voted the top urologist in the San Francisco Bay Area for the past 7 or 8 years.
Nice.
But when I was about 50, I became really interested in regenerative urology. So guys getting erectile dysfunction, you can take pills, which will help you, but as soon as that pill wears off, the erection goes away. Yeah. And so is there anything that we could do that would more permanent? And there was a technique came out called Gainswave or low intensity shockwave therapy that actually helped grow new blood vessels. And then also some regenerative techniques called PRP or platelet rich plasma or the P-shot and the stem cells. And so I became really interested in like, how can we actually turn back time? And so I became interested in that. And my partners became interested in selling themselves to the hospital. So being a doctor and running a practice is really tough. I kind of have an acumen for business, and I didn't mind running the practice, but I didn't want to support the whole practice and do all the work myself. And my partners really weren't willing to chip in. And at the same time, I was trying to build this private pay erectile dysfunction clinic. And to make a really, really long story short, my partners rewarded me by, when I showed up to work one day, giving me a piece of paper saying that you're fired.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. It's the only job I'd ever had. I thought I was a partner, but legally we were shareholders and employees. And one day I just found myself without a job.
How long were you there?
I was there for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So I was the shock. I was the most recognizable person in the place. Most people referred to it as, Dr. Brandeis's practice. When you looked at the Google Analytics of who got searched the most, I got searched more than all my other partners combined.
Yeah.
But
what did that do to you as a human?
Oh man.
Insecurities, depression, like anxiety.
Well, so one day I was in total disbelief. The next day I was really, really angry.
Yeah.
And then my stress response is to work.
Yeah.
And I could have worked for Kaiser, but I didn't want to work for Kaiser. I'm not really the kind of person that likes working for other people. And urology jobs, there may be a handful in a metropolitan area. It's not,
Sure.
it's not like primary care where there's tons of them.
Yeah.
I could have moved to another place, but my kids were happy in school. I have 4 kids. They're teenagers, so they're in high school and junior high school. And so I had to basically reinvent myself and really invent a specialty for myself, which was regenerative urology and erectile dysfunction. And it was a brutal 2 or 3 years of creating something out of nothing. Starting a practice out of nothing, doing clinical research, writing a book, The 21st Century Man, which is the most comprehensive and medically accurate book ever written on men's health. Now I speak for BTL, which makes the M-Sculpt and M-Cella devices, which I recently presented papers on M-Cella showing that it's the first device ever to improve the intensity and duration of male orgasm.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I'm not curing cancer, but maybe orgasms are second
fun.
place.
Right. What was your biggest fear when you went through that? You went home and you started to think, man, I gotta work. Because most guys will consume themselves in work to avoid the pain and the stress and the stuff that they feel inside. But what were your fears at that point? Was it inadequacy? Was it letting my family down? Like, what was it?
Oh yeah. You feel like you're going to let your family down, your kids down, your wife down. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I talked to my father-in-law, who his story is in the book. The first chapter is on the hero's journey, and I talk about the immigrant hero's journey. He came to this country with $6 in 1967 from India, came to Kansas, right? So talking about a strange culture shock. And I asked him, I was like, did you have any self-doubt, any trepidation? And he basically said, listen, I never thought about failing. Like I couldn't fail.
Yeah.
And I had one of my favorite patients, Dean Laird, who passed away recently, but at the age of 96. But he was the only fighter pilot in World War II to have shot down both a German and a Japanese fighter plane. Oh, just a crazy. Total badass. And his family gave me this amazing picture of him in his plane on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. And I asked him one time when he was in my office, I said, what were you thinking on the flight deck? And he said, a lot of guys were really scared. He said, I thought I was invincible. He said, I didn't think anyone could ever put a bullet in my plane. And he said, no one ever did. He said, I got hit by anti-aircraft fire from the ground, but no other pilot ever put a bullet in my plane. And so, I didn't really have time to bemoan my fate. I turned around and I sued my ex-partners in 2 separate lawsuits, which fortunately after 2 years I won. But it was just a brutal time in my life. That was my hero's journey. All along I followed the path that, a lot of people do. Okay, you go to college, then you go to medical school, then you go to residency, then you get a job. It's not that it's cushy. It's not that you don't work hard, but it doesn't involve personal creativity or risk, ambition, and being fired just unceremoniously. I know my partners even had the courtesy or the courage to hand me the note. They gave it to the human resource director.
Or even have a conversation with you at the very least. Like, hey man, you've been here for 20 years. We love you. And this is time to
there was a lot that led up to it, but
sure.
But to make a long story short, that's really what happened. And so, my hero's journey was really picking myself up from being knocked down, thinking that, I was indispensable.
Yeah.
And 2 days after they finally paid me what they owed me for the lawsuit, they announced the merger with the hospital. But I'm just not the kind of person that likes to work for other people. You know, I'm too driven and creative
Sure.
to do that.
Did that, do you ever look back on that and go, man, I'm so thankful, so grateful that those guys fired me? It was hard in the beginning, but man, I'm so grateful that they made that decision for me. If they hadn't have made that decision, did you have any plans on leaving?
Well, you know, I mean, if they hadn't fired me, then I probably would be working for the hospital, and I would
That's what I
probably
mean.
be doing
So they
things in the
did you a,
hospital. Yeah, I mean, and when it happened, I knew it was sort of inevitable. We were parting ways, but it just happened in a very unpleasant, acrimonious way, and
it was abrupt. So it's
it
always a
was
shock to the
abrupt.
body.
And but you know, it gave me a lot of energy. You know, sometimes people are in their early 50s and they're looking to be really comfortable in their career and just kind of coast. And I did the absolute opposite of coasting. You know, now I have to learn how to kind of slow it back down and kind of get back to a somewhat normal life. But, you know, during COVID, it's hard to live a normal life. And, you know, the practice was just starting to pick up, and then COVID hit, and then I was off for 3 months, and I said, you know what? I need to write a book. I need to do something. And so the 21st Century Man sort of came out of my medical practice, which is taking care of men. And men come to see me when they're ready for a change in their life, whether they're in their 40s or 50s or 60s. You know, something is not working physically, whether it's erectile dysfunction or losing muscle or too much fat or just a general sense of malaise because their testosterone's declined. And I've really become an expert in understanding these processes in men and understanding how to turn them around, both physiologically and psychologically.
Yeah. Which is a very parallel journey to what we're on. Men come to us when they're ready to make changes in their lives, when they're tired of living the same fantasy that never comes true, you know, about their life. One day it'll be better. When they are tired of the relationship they're in with themselves or with their partner or with their children, and they really know, well, they didn't know, and they quickly find out that they must make changes in them in order for those things to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
they come to both of us when they're actually ready to change their life. And that's really cool. I love that you said that, because it's true. If they're, I mean, and look, there are a lot of men out there that like to complain about their situation, but they don't want to do anything about it. And that's fine. They're not for guys like you or me, and for our organizations or our missions.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean, I sit down with my patients, and we have a lot of sophisticated analytics that we do in the office. And I chart out a plan, you know, a physical rejuvenation plan for my patients. And then I look them in the eye and say, listen, you know, I can't go home with you. I'm not your mom.
Right.
Whether you succeed in this or not is entirely up to you. I got more than my fair share of problems that I got to deal with. I can't deal with your problems. I can give you a path that if you follow this path, I have hundreds of men that have succeeded wildly on this path, you know, and everything that I'm showing you is proven, is factual. I have all these fancy diplomas up on the wall, but in the end, you know, you're on your own hero's journey, and that motivation and determination has to come from you.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And that's going to be the clip that we start with, because that's what guys need to hear. Yeah. I can give you everything in the world. I can give you every freaking resource. I can show you every diploma. I could have an entire office covered in diplomas. You can't even see drywall. I got so many diplomas. I can't do the work for you though.
Yeah.
I can't do it for you. And this is some of the change that a lot of guys, they go through this almost like a grief period where personal accountability and responsibility has been absent, mainly except for their professional lives. But their personal lives, if they ran them like their professional lives, they'd be great. But they don't. And they're like totally juxtaposed in these two opposite worlds. And that's the piece, is you can come and you can buy coaching from me. You can come to you and get a whole write-up and a whole plan and pay for that. However, if you don't do the work, or if you're not motivated, like not enough's at stake. And that's the big thing that I want to talk about or ask you about is, what's at stake for your guys? Is it death? Is it sexual performance? Is it all the stuff in between? Because there's something that motivates these guys to get into action.
Yeah. Well, there's like, that Maslow's pyramid,
Yeah.
right? So like, food and survival and protection is at the bottom, and, total enlightenment is the top. I kind of have a Maslow's pyramid. I've never actually put it down on paper for a midlife man. And at the very top is, physical intimacy with their spouse. Right. So, and the bottom is, physical performance. So if you're out of shape, and if you're putting on fat, if you're not building muscle, you're going to lose your ability to get an erection. If your mental health isn't strong, if your relationships aren't strong, and if all those things are strong and everything's going well, then, you'll have a good sexual relationship or intimate relationship with your spouse. And so that's where things build up to. I'm still looking for a cartoonist to build to create an illustration for me, looking up a guy's penis and seeing like his whole life, because that's the genesis of the 21st century man, is seeing guys for erectile dysfunction and realizing that they're not going to have sex, or they're not going to want physical intimacy unless all the other aspects of their life are working. If there's cardiovascular disease, if there's cancer, if there's stroke, if there's diabetes, if there's accidents, there's infectious disease, if there's depression, anxiety, problems with work-life balance, all of these things, if they're out of balance, it affects a guy's ability to be physically intimate. And so I have to address or solve all those problems to get a guy to that point. Like something as simple as sleep, right?
Yeah.
If you don't sleep well, if you have sleep apnea, then you don't have REM sleep. If you don't have REM sleep, you don't get nighttime erections. If you don't have nighttime erections, then guess what? You get erectile dysfunction. Right. So I had a patient. Yeah.
I shouldn't ask you if that's true. That's I've never heard of that before.
So you're not getting... so one amazing tip for your folks out there, right?
Yeah.
When you're 20, did you get a erection every morning?
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Right. But in your 40s, do you get erections every morning? Probably not.
I mean, I do.
Okay.
I'm not 40 though. I'm 39.
Right. Okay. Well, in your 40s or maybe your 50s, you won't get erections every morning. That's the first indication that the blood vessels to the penis, which are some of the smaller blood vessels in your body, 1 or 2 millimeters, are beginning to get clogged. Right. And that precedes erectile dysfunction by about 10 years. And erectile dysfunction precedes cardiovascular disease by about 10 years. Right. So if your morning erections are going away, the morning glory is not there anymore, you have a 20-year warning that you're going to get cardiovascular disease.
Wow. Never heard of that. I've never heard it put like that. Wow.
And the book is loaded with all sorts of stuff to help you understand how to make changes, in eating, how to make changes in exercising, stretching, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, relationships. Relationships are such an important part of life. There was have you heard of the Harvard longevity study?
Yes.
Yeah. So the main result from the Harvard longevity study, which is a study where they followed men and their families for 75 years, was that the quality of your relationships and mental health was the most important factor predicting a happy and healthy life. More important than, taking an aspirin a day, or eating well, or exercising every day, or your prostate health, or anything else. It was the quality of your relationships.
I love that, man. It's, I also want to just give you some gratitude, because there are so many doctors out there that when a guy comes in and says, I can't get an erection anymore, or I'm having a lot of trouble keeping an erection, or something like that, and the doctor says, here you go, writes down a script, pops you a couple blue pills, and you're band-aiding a problem. And like we talked about in the beginning, actually it was before we started recording, one of the things that we've found in the area of personal performance, personal development, overall evolvement of men, humans in general, but men specifically because of this program, they are not one section of the pie. Can't solve one section. It's okay. Other personal development courses, they take care of one section. Hey, meditate, journal, do this, get your finances in order or whatever. But you're missing the entire roots of the tree. You're missing the entire foundational elements. So you're building a building on sand. Now, the tallest building in the world is built on sand, the Burj Al Arab in Dubai. However, the way that it's built on sand is with a really solid foundation underneath of it, of pillars.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you're doing that is awesome. Probably a lot more work for you because you've got to adjust the entire human. And I think absolutely responsible and needed. Now, does it make the other doctors out there that are writing pill prescriptions irresponsible? No. I just think if you want to serve somebody at the highest level, you've got to look at the entire human. Mental health, emotional health, physical health. You got to look at their relationships. You've got to look at their past, their traumas. You have to look at all of that, because other than that, you're just solving the surface level issues, and the depth will just surface back again.
Absolutely. Well, there's a critical chapter in the 21st Century Man, which is how to form a partnership with your doctor. Like we talked about, I'm a kind of doctor. I don't exist on like the top of a mountain and send edicts down to my patients. I work with my patients as partners. But you have to understand things from a doctor standpoint. There was a study by Cerner. It's a big electronic medical record company. They looked at 100 million charts. And what they found was that the average doctor visit was 16 minutes and 14 seconds. So you got to approach a doctor's visit in a totally different way. You have 16 minutes and 14 seconds. Don't talk about the weather. Don't talk about your dog. Don't talk about, the football game or the baseball game. Okay. You need to go in there with a synopsis of your medical history. What surgeries you had, what medical issues you have, what your family history is. Then you go in with a list of your medications, a list of your most recent labs, right? I waste so much time looking up labs that I could be talking to my patients. A list of recent imaging procedures, right? Have the results, right? And then make type up a history. My back is hurting. It started 3 weeks ago. I had a similar back pain 3 years ago and I needed an epidural. It started on the right side. Now it's on the left side also. It was 10 out of 10. Now it's 5 out of 10. I took Advil and Motrin and Tylenol. I do some yoga and stretching. I use hot packs. I mean, just go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then write down a list of questions. What are the questions that you want answered at the end of the visit? And if you hand that to the doctor, you'll get a big smile on the face of the doctor. And then, like, I have a dictaphone, so I dictate everything in. It takes me about 3-4 minutes to dictate, what the pertinent positives are. I can leaf through things and see, what's important to me, what's not important to me. And then, you know what? You got 13 minutes and 14 seconds for that doctor to really try to think about you and what's going on and how to treat you better. And then if they put you on, say they put you on a Flexeril, anti-muscle spasmodic, but they could talk to you about, okay, these are the side effects. Call me in a week if it's not better. Don't drink and take Flex, all the things that you really should know that the doctor really does know. But in 16 minutes and 14 seconds, they can't tell you all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to think of your relationship with your doctor as a partnership. How can I provide you with all the information you need in an efficient way so that we can work together to get me better? And I walk out of there having all my questions answered and all the information that I need.
And you feel more confident too, as a patient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the
16
21st century,
that is
16 minutes and 14 seconds. Yeah. I mean, it's 100 million charts and 155,000 doctors.
Damn.
So it's not a small.
It's not small. No.
Not a small sample size. This is what it is. And from the 20 years I've been practicing medicine, Medicare hasn't given us a raise. Right. But the medical inflation goes up about 4% a year. So you're basically losing about 3 or 4% every year. So what do? You see more patients. But at a certain point, and that's why I don't take insurance anymore. 3 years ago, I just stopped taking insurance because I couldn't do the stuff that I do with my patients if I only had 16 minutes and 14 seconds.
But what about, so my doctor here in LA doesn't take insurance either. And I'm able to have and I do this kind of thing only because my medical history, and I've known, like, I don't care about my doctor's life. He doesn't care about my life unless it's pertinent to the symptoms or the things that I've got going on. But do you see medicine going that route? And then what happens to the people that just can't afford to come to somebody like you, pay out of pocket?
Well, I mean, that's why I wrote The 21st Century Man, because it's my mission to help men. You know, I see men come into my office, they're 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. They're really good people. You know, men have gotten really a bad rap. People like Madoff and Weinstein and Epstein and all these dirtballs, you know, have given men a bad rap. But the guys that I see that come into my office are really good guys. They take care of their families. They take care of their kids. They take care of their communities, their job. And they don't take care of themselves. You know, there's this ethos of like, oh, you know, I'm too tough. I'm too strong to take care of myself, you know. And guess what? You teach the people around you not to take care of you, not to do anything for you. And then when you need help, it's too late. You know, everyone's like, oh, you know, dad, he can take care of himself.
Yeah, it's a habit they built. So why aren't more men, besides that, what are the reasons, in your opinion, why guys aren't coming in and making appointments? Is it just a lack of self-care?
The statistics is that men book half as many primary care appointments as women.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of it's because stuff doesn't break down until it breaks down. So, I mean, if you drove your car 70,000 miles, it probably would drive okay for 60, 70,000 miles. But then at that point, you know, you're it's hard to fix the problems that you've created.
Yeah.
But if you change the oil every 5 or 10,000 miles and change the tires and all that kind of stuff, you'd be a lot better off. So guys do that for their cars, but they don't do that for themselves.
You know, I saw something from Elon Musk that said most people will freak out to try and, like, when their phone's about to die, and they will freak out, drop everything to find a plug to get their phone plugged in. But when their dreams are about to die, they don't do anything about it. And they don't even know sometimes. The dreams are just dying around them. And that they're on this path that leads to about 3% fulfillment of their 100% allocated, you know, that they could tap into. And it's just, it's very interesting. I talk to guys all the time about colonoscopies, and I'm like, guys, listen, it's not that big a deal. But the problem is it's too late. It's too late when you have to go and you have to get forced to get a colonoscopy because you're having issues, or some kind of urology checkup because it's awkward or uncomfortable to go to a urologist.
Yeah. But, life is awkward and uncomfortable, right?
Right.
I mean, let's just be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
You know, but I've saved so many guys' lives with prostate exams and PSAs and my colleagues in gastroenterology. I mean, I had my colonoscopy. It sucked. You know, the procedure wasn't bad, but the prep was just miserable. But, you know, I know a lot of people that died of colon cancer, and I've taken care of so many men who died of you know, prostate cancer. And even, you know, I have a lot of South Asian men, and there's a huge incidence of cardiovascular disease in the Indian South Asian population. And I send so many of my patients who come in for erectile dysfunction for calcium scores for their heart. And I've saved so many people's lives just by ordering a calcium score and showing them that all of a sudden, look, you have a cardiovascular disease that you didn't know about. And guess what? For a quarter of men, the first sign of cardiovascular disease is sudden death.
Oh,
you know, those are just statistics.
Yeah.
And
that's a quarter, though. That's a lot.
A quarter. Yeah. A quarter.
That's a lot.
Yeah. 1 out of 4, you know? that guys respond to numbers and statistics.
Yeah.
You know, the chapter that we wrote on stupid things that men do to get themselves into the emergency room by Malcolm Johnson, who's an emergency room physician, right? 90% of eye injuries are preventable by wearing safety goggles.
Simple,
right?
Simple enough.
You know, I mean, do you really want to be the idiot that has a metal splinter in their eye because you were hacking away at something with your Sawzall and you weren't wearing safety goggles? And now you look like a pirate for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know, or 50% of hand injuries are preventable by wearing gloves.
Yeah.
I still remember when I was a kid, there was a baseball pitcher for the Mets. I think his name was Jesse Orosco. And he was doing the hedges and he cut his finger off. And that ended he was like those days, he was making like $1 million or $2 million a year, which, these days probably be making 25 million a year.
Right.
And he cut his finger off on the hedge. Or this time of year, I see a lot of guys falling off ladders trying to put up Christmas lights. The thing is, a lot of the stuff in this book is about the aging process. And I don't blame men for not understanding the aging process, because if you don't see the big picture, like I love putting up this graph, which shows the world record for the 100-yard freestyle swimming. And from 20 to 60, it's pretty flat. After 60, the decline in times gets pretty significant. And after 80, it really is steep. And so there are physiologic changes that men undergo, and it doesn't matter if you're an elite world-class athlete, you're going to undergo them. Between 40 and 70, men lose 0.8% of their muscle mass per year, and after 70, they lose 1.5% of their muscle mass per year.
Jeez.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So if you're not preparing yourself for that, I see a lot of guys who are overweight, and I explain to them, the best day to, we talk about it with smoking, the best day to stop smoking is the day you started, and the second best is today. The best day to lose weight is the day you started overeating, but the second best is today. Yeah. And I get what's called a basal metabolic rate on my patients, which is how many calories you burn at rest. So you understand how many calories you're burning. And then you have to get an app like my Fitness Pal or some app that tells you how many calories you're taking in. And that's the start of understanding weight loss. And if you carry 50 extra pounds on yourself every day, could you imagine wearing a 50-pound backpack all day, every day?
I know people that have put 100 on.
Yeah, you'd be exhausted.
Yeah.
Of course, you'd come home at the end of the day and you'd be exhausted.
Right.
But you have the ability to take that weight off. It's knowledge and determination.
Yeah.
And the 21st century man will give you knowledge, but you have to be willing to battle your demons and dragons.
Yeah. And some people eat hero, like we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Some people eat because they're bored. Some people eat because they're depressed or angry or whatever. Sure. You got to figure out why you're eating. Same thing with drinking, right? I get so many of my patients. I stopped drinking about 10, 15 years ago. And I was never a heavy drinker, but it was sort of getting in the way of my lifestyle. And I talk to my patients about alcohol, and there's a whole section in the book on addiction. Tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, internet addiction, and pornography. But I ask my patients, why do you drink? Mm-hmm. It's really interesting when you ask someone, why do you drink alcohol? Because first of all, alcohol is a depressant.
Yeah.
Right. That's the class of drug that it's in. Second of all, it disinhibits you. Right. So most stupid decisions that humans make are done under the influence of alcohol, whether it's driving or, hooking up with the wrong person or domestic abuse. So many of our bad behaviors are related to alcohol, even though, there are all these wonderful advertisements on TV and radio that alcohol is great. And everyone thinks that, red wine is going to save their life. But I mean, get real. And then the third thing is
that's a very blended. That's a very blended agenda, from polyphenol and grape to red wine will save your life. It's a very,
yeah, I mean,
it's a stretch and a half.
let's be real. Who's sponsoring those studies?
Right. It's like the milk. It's like the dairy industry sponsoring in the 50s about milk and calcium and protein. It's a total agenda.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and then you can burn alcohol.
Well, what do those people say? What do those people say, by the way? I'm guessing that the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, it's a habit. When I stopped drinking, we just replaced it with Diet Coke, which, may not be any better than alcohol, but
right.
It was certainly easier to transition from that to, lemon water or whatever we are drinking now. But the thing is, if you're overweight, then it's stupid to drink alcohol because it's just empty calories. And the calories that you're taking in need to be protein. They need to be fiber. They need to be healthy fats. They shouldn't be alcohol that's going to make you sad and stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a mindfulness about the decisions that you're making. And if you're the hero of your own journey, are you going to be making those type of thoughtless decisions? When you're
think about this. What about the, I think about being a model of a man on purpose. And my daughter's 6th birthday was yesterday. And I wrote this thing on Facebook, like, the day she was born is the day I said, I'm not good enough to be your dad. I am not the right model for you. I'm not the right model of a husband. And I set out on a course and subsequently built these businesses around that to help other men. But I think about, if you're overweight and you're pounding alcohol, like, what are your kids watching? What are they thinking? One, you don't have the energy to play with them, hang out with them. You're pounding alcohol. So they're watching that habit and thinking it's completely okay. But what kind of model are you? And I'm not saying it's a bad model. It's whatever serves you best. But I'm saying, what are your kids getting from that? And for most guys, for guys listening, this might be what they needed to hear. Shifting, changing, making those transitions from how I used to do it to how I'm going to do it now. That is tough as hell. And it only comes with one choice. I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to do that today. That's AA's theory. One day at a time. That's it. It's nice and easy.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
just a choice.
I mean, when I was growing up, you could get a fake ID just by, like, I remember on my New York license, I just used a pencil and wrote over the year. I made the 67 into a 63 and said, oh yeah. But, these days it's hard to get a fake ID. And I asked my kids, how do kids get alcohol these days? And they said, well, they just steal it from their parents.
That's fair.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we don't have any alcohol in our house. And so my kids, knock on wood, as best I can tell, they're not drinking any alcohol.
Sure.
And I think a good part of it is because my wife and I have been an example.
Yeah.
And believe me, I got more than my fair share of problems. I'm the last person on the earth to say that I'm perfect. I'm just, I do the best I can. I wake up every morning and try to do the best I can. And, I think that's all we can hope that people do. And the purpose of the 21st century man is to inform people, to educate men on how to make the right decisions. But I don't tell people what to do. Even in my own practice, when people look at me and ask me, like, oh, what should I do? I don't tell people what to do. I provide them with really high level information. And I really respect men's intelligence. Maybe that's because I live in an area where, we're close to Apple and Google and Facebook and Oracle and Lawrence Livermore Lab. So I have a lot of really intelligent patients. So I'm in the habit of explaining things to patients. But, I have a lot of respect for men's intelligence. And if you explain to them, like, listen, 90% of eye injuries are preventable by putting safety goggles on, guys will think next time before they start hacking stuff up with their Sawzall. Let me put some eye protection on because I don't want to be that idiot that rolls into the emergency room with, one eye sticking out.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. Why do you feel like men aren't reaching their fullest potential or living into their most fulfilling life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the sad thing is 100 years ago, women lived 1 year longer than men, and now women live 5 years longer than men. So what happened in 100 years that women now live 4 years longer than we do? And men live less long, even before COVID, men live less long than we were living 10, 15 years ago because of high rates of alcoholism, suicide, and opioid abuse.
Just a readily available prescription drugs.
Yeah. And, it's especially less educated men are looking at the future, and they're not seeing what their expectations for life were or are, and they're depressed. But at the end of the day, no one gives you anything. No. You got to get off your ass, re-educate yourself, motivate yourself. I mean, it's in life, people don't give stuff to you. I could have, when I got fired, I could have sat there and felt sorry for myself. And thank God my wife was supportive of me and my kids were supportive of me. And I just started working, but that's, just because you got fired in the factory doesn't mean your life's over.
Let me ask you something. Did you share with your kids what had happened to you and make them a part of the not a part of like the negative process, but a part of the process that you were going through so they could learn, kind of watch you? Did you do that? 1 and 2, did that help you in the decisions you made every day to keep
I think when my kids look back, I think that's probably one of the best experiences that they've ever, that they'll look back on, and their best learning experiences. They had a very comfortable life. We would travel. Money wasn't an issue. We weren't flying around on Lear jets, but we were certainly comfortable. And they faced a prospect that like money stopped coming in. And my middle daughter, who's really like a talented reader, and she worked for our attorney, at the age of 16. And cool. My kids watched all of a sudden a lot of TV, and they saw mom and dad struggling through the lawsuits, struggling to start our supplement company. We have a supplement company called Affirm Science that makes a nitric oxide boosting supplement, a testosterone boosting supplement. And,
nice.
They fill orders for us and helped us with marketing and helped us with emails.
I love that.
They experienced
great lessons.
They experienced the pain, and they saw me and my wife by proxy get knocked down and fight our way back up.
So that's something that comes up for me is, you worked so hard to provide this life and this lifestyle they were living, right? And then they saw you guys get knocked down and pick yourselves back up, and they kind of join the fight with you. How do you think that they would understand struggle if you had just kind of sailed along? Do you think their lives would be different if you hadn't have run into that?
Yeah. I mean, we're not the kind of parents, especially my wife, is not the kind of mother that lets kids sit on their ass and not do much. And so, like all our kids are straight A students, and they all, have extracurriculars that they excel at. But still, I did that same thing. And it wasn't really till 50 that I was forced into reshaping myself. And so, most people at some point in their life, either once or twice or 3 times, whether it's a divorce or a death or being fired or some sort of accident or personal tragedy, will have to deal with that. And it's how you deal with that really that's your defining moments in life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you put it like that. Those are your defining moments. And sharing with somebody what you're experiencing. And we always say in our masterminds, in our group, in our community, like, your responsibility is to bandage your wound. Then you can bring that to the group and get help, because you'll be talking about what happened from a past tense, not bleeding all over the group with your emotional registration and all kinds of craziness, and which the group doesn't benefit. But sharing something like, hey, this is what I went through with my wife or with my children or with my boss or my old job, sharing that with your children, I think is phenomenal, because unless you're a guy that wants to be some kind of Superman and look impervious to your children, there's no way that they could possibly learn the lessons that they need to from you. They're not learning as much as they could. You got to share with them what you're going through. I think one of the coolest things that my daughter, who just turned 6 yesterday, says to me is, I like that you tell me you're scared sometimes, because then it makes it okay for me to feel scared. And then what I told her was, well, I feel scared a lot. I mean, we run businesses, and we're away from our families on the East Coast. And what I say to myself is, even though I'm scared, I know I can do this, and I'm going to go for it. Right. And then I lock that in and I affirm that. So she does the same thing. That may be one of the greatest life lessons for her ever. But because I shared that, she goes, Dad, do you ever get scared? And I said, of course, every day I get scared. I get scared about our businesses sometimes. I get worried about you. I get worried about your brother. I get worried about your mom. Like, I get worried about a lot of stuff. And here's how I get through it. That could be invaluable to her for her life.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're better than I am. I mean, my wife really was the one that dragged it in front of the kids, because for me, it felt like a failure. It felt like a disappointment that, I wasn't the sort of the breadwinner and the surgeon. And, I've done all sorts I helped build surgical robotics, and I did all these cool things. And I wasn't that person anymore. Yeah, I wasn't that superhero anymore. And I kind of wanted to, for lack of a better term, just sort of hide that from the kids. And my wife just wouldn't let me do that. And, it certainly will benefit the kids tremendously.
But isn't that aren't most men trying to hide the softer side, the softer parts, and guard those parts that make them feel vulnerable or emotional? I mean, that's like the guy's MO, unfortunately.
Of course.
And that our missions are to break that habit and break that cycle of guys who are just trying to be tough, put on the strong face, tough it up, suck it up, get out there and play anyway. But guys have feelings, guys get emotional, guys get hurt, and you have to explain that stuff. So I went through a business failure in 2019 when a partner had walked off with a lot of money. And my daughter was 4 years old. She understood what was going on. She totally knew what was going on. She knew that mom and dad weren't happy sometimes. She was 3.5. And so I would sit down and I would just say, hey, so this is what happened. I wouldn't go into the details, but right. I knew that sharing with her that I was a human and that I'm not impervious to pain or fear or anything like that. I think that's what I wanted from my parents, who just didn't have the understanding and education on how to do that with their own selves, more or less explain it to a child.
Right.
I don't know if that messes her up, or I don't know if that benefits her. I'm pretty sure it benefits her, but
hopefully, I think so.
But
absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the thing about the 21st Century Man book, is it's filled with like all of in a very sort of empathetic way, like 40% of men are obese, and 50% of men have high blood pressure, and 15% of men smoke, and 12% of men don't have health insurance. And most people don't understand anything about health insurance. Our health insurance system in this country is just a mess. But there's an amazing chapter in the book written by a health insurance executive that explains health insurance to you. And so, way. It's another one of my patients was the number 2 guy at Anthem Blue Cross for a long time. And he read it and he said, this is by far and away the best health insurance chapter I've ever read in my entire life.
Nice.
And so, I mean, a lot of us have to choose health insurance either for our family or our employees. And if you don't know what the difference between an HMO and a PPO and an EPO, I mean, I have guys with PhDs in my office and I say, do you have an HMO or a PPO? Because, if it's an HMO, I can't order labs for you. If it's a PPO, I can do that. And they're like, I don't know. How do I find out? You got a PhD in physics, dude. And you can't figure out if you got an HMO or a PPO. But I mean, that's, that's just the reality of health insurance in this country. But if you don't have to be ashamed that you don't know, just pick up the book and read the health insurance chapter, because the book is written for men, right? It's not one of those 900-page books that really could only be 15 pages worth of information. It's 900 pages, and that's the least, I guarantee you, because I either wrote or edited every single one of those pages. And this book could not be less than 900 pages. Every word in the book like counts. The book is
awesome.
so information dense. It's 101 chapters. So each chapter, like I wrote the prostate chapter, it's like 8 or 9 pages. They're textbooks for the prostate.
Right.
And I condensed everything that I know about the prostate down into 8 or 9 pages. So they're
That's
well
so cool.
worth reading.
This is like it's Cliff Notes almost without it being Cliff Notes. It's
exactly.
It's like
but it's also funny, right? Because I'm 54 years old, so like I have quotes on all, like the cocaine chapter is a quote from Robin Williams. Cocaine's God's way of telling you have too much money. Or the orgasm chapter is a quote from Woody Allen. I want to live my life backwards, start off dead and end up as an orgasm.
That's funny, man. I like this. I'm excited to read it. I'm really excited to read it. So let's wrap up with this. What are some action steps that guys can take? Like right now, guys obese,
I
guys
think
drinking too much, guys not getting erections. What can you do?
Yeah. So, if you have erectile dysfunction, erectile dysfunction for most men is an issue with circulation. 90% of men, it's an issue with circulation. Okay. So what are the things you can do to improve circulation? First of all, exercise. Second of all, eat better. Third of all, take a nitric oxide booster, right? Nitric oxide boosters improve circulation, improve blood pressure. I have a nitric oxide booster called Affirm from Affirm Science, but it's a super simple thing to do. You lose nighttime erections, take a nitric oxide booster before you go to sleep, right? A lot of elite endurance athletes take nitric oxide boosters and improves blood flow to the brain. Okay. PDE5 inhibitors like Viagra and Cialis, they work great. And there are really no long-term side effects from it. And I have a lot of my patients taking them. If you're not getting nighttime erections and you're taking a nitric oxide boost and you're still not getting nighttime erections, take a PDE5 inhibitor before you go to sleep. Get good nighttime erections. Yeah, take a low dose. Low dose of Cialis, low dose of Viagra. Yeah. I put a ton of my guys on low dose tadalafil, which is Cialis. It's $1 a pill. Less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Which is now we know is the precursor to heart disease. So we want those erections in the morning.
Exactly. Huh. A lot of guys, when stuff doesn't make sense to me, I test. Right. Yeah. So when a guy comes in and they have a family history of heart disease or they're too young to be complaining of erectile dysfunction, go get a calcium score. It's a couple $100. It's a CAT scan. It takes 1 minute. It's minimal radiation. And guess what? It gives you an idea of whether you have occult cardiovascular disease. You don't want to be that 1/4 of guys where you drop dead.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
so this is any age though, right? This isn't like if you're over 50, do this. This is if you're 22 and you're experiencing some issues.
Yeah. 22 is maybe
it's not that young.
22. Yeah. 22 is a little bit different. This book really, I say, 35? Is for men 35 and older.
Okay.
The machinery is working pretty well. It's like your car. You can drive your car 20, 25,000 miles and it'd be fine. But if you don't take care of it at all, you're going to have a lot of damage under the hood at the age of 35 or 40 that's going to be hard to fix. And unlike cars where you can swap out parts, human beings, you can't swap out parts.
Right. Last question. What do you do for your own growth? I know a lot of the guys out there love hearing this from guests on the show. What do you do for personal growth, development? What are you reading? Obviously, you listen to my podcast all the time. We know that for a fact. Of course. What do you do?
Honestly, the past 3 years, I've been totally consumed with building my practice, doing clinical research, building my supplement company, and writing. I've been up till 2:00 every night writing this book. And so, but I know
working
more
out, you're meditating.
Yeah. You know what? So what I do is 2 days of elliptical, 2 days of exercise bike, and 2 days of circuit training.
Got it.
And then I use my M-Sculpt machine, which is the most amazing muscle building machine ever created. I can build muscle 10 to 15 times faster than you can do in the gym using the Sculpt.
Is that what looks like giant paddles and they get strapped onto you?
Exactly.
Okay.
Every Hollywood movie star that you see that has six-pack abs is Sculpt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I saw the machine actually at a place in Baltimore, and they were doing a demonstration on somebody's ass, and I was like, wow, that is quite interesting.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'll
it
tell
was-
you a funny
it was,
story.
You know,
So I got
contracting.
the machine, right? And I got it for the abs, and I was doing abs, and it's great because I have a lousy back, and so core strength is really critical for lower back issues. And then I got the arm paddles, and I put an inch on my biceps and triceps in a month.
What?
That was amazing. Yeah, amazing, and it correlates to strength.
Real. It's
too.
real. It's real muscle. I mean, it's not.
It's real muscle because I have a
not
body
like
composition analysis machine, so I can tell exactly how much muscle I'm putting on. Right.
How long does it take? 10 minutes?
Half an hour per body part.
Got it. Okay.
And I usually do about 6 weeks on patients, and I'm getting amazing results. So, so I've been married to my wife for over 20 years. So my wife looks at me and I'm like, I might as well be a cardboard cutout. Right. And you'll get there. I started doing my glutes.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'd done my arms, I'd done my abs. I'm like, well, let me see how the glutes work. So I'd done glutes like 3 or 4 treatments. And I was walking in our bedroom in my underwear, and my wife turns and looked away, and then looked back at me. Nice. So I got the first double take in about 10 years.
Take. I love that.
Like, man, this Sculpt machine's working well for me.
Where do you have that, in your practice or your house?
My practice.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So wait, so if you do, I don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but if you do 15 minutes or 30 minutes on your arms, and you do that over the course of a couple of weeks, do you have to maintain that, or does it kind of maintain itself for a while? And then
for whatever reason, it lasts longer than the workouts that you would do in the gym. Because I think you remodel the muscle in a more complete way. But you do maintenance. So I did like triceps yesterday, and my triceps are really they're bulging today. It's amazing.
That's awesome, man.
It's my I love efficiency. I love sort of high tech stuff, and when I got the machine, it's because I got 4 kids, I got a wife, I got 3 companies, and I just didn't have the time to put in the gym. I mean, I love working out, but I just don't have the time.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Well, this has been a pleasure. I've had fun with you. We've learned a lot of stuff, and I think we should do another one of these and go deeper. Like, I'll do a poll of the audience, and we'll go deeper into some topics that guys are really looking at.
Oh, you got to talk about sex.
Okay.
It's really fun.
For sure. I'm going to get you rebooked.
Yeah. It's, we have a really, really good time talking about sex, like in a real way.
I'm writing it down right now. All right.
We can talk about sex and building muscle for men over 50.
That's right. For men over 50. That's perfect. All right, my friend. This has been great. Great meeting you.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. Audience, I hope you appreciated this a plethora of information today. If you want more information, you can check it out on the website, mentalpurposepodcast.com. It'll be on the show notes. All the Dr. Judson's website and all the stuff to find the 21st Century Man book. It's all going to be there. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.